In the world of Red Dead Redemption 2, there are plenty of stories of townsfolk with dark secrets and skeletons in their closets, often hidden behind seemingly ordinary facades. There's the gunsmith in Rhodes, whose everyday business harbours a chilling secret in the basement. The Aberdeen pig farm, brother and sister in an incestuous relationship who prey on visitors, robbing, murdering and burying them in a mass grave nearby. This theme of families shaped by disturbing secrets and darkness is prevalent throughout the game, providing a deeper, more unsettling layer to the world Rockstar has created. There is one family though that to me take the crown for the most deplorable and heinous crime of them all. This is the story of the Braithwaites, and possibly the darkest tale in Red Dead Redemption 2. This is the story of the forgotten daughter, Gertrude Braithwaite. Before we begin, let's recap on who the Braithwaites were in the world of Red Dead, and how their story became intertwined with that of the Van der Linde gang. Originating from England, the Braithwaites established themselves in America late in the 18th century. A few decades later in the 19th century, they had built a bustling slave plantation at their manor that elevated them to becoming one of the richest and most powerful families in the area. At the peak of their power, the Braithwaites were untouchable, capable of committing serious crimes without fear of consequence. The abolition of slavery in 1865, following the defeat of the South in the Civil War, significantly damaged the Braithwaites. They lost a large amount of their wealth. Their cause wasn't helped by a half-a-century-long feud with the Greys, another local powerful family. Both believed that the other had stolen treasure belonging to them many decades ago. At some point prior to 1898, the Braithwaites turned to illegally producing moonshine, and quickly became the dominant producer in Lemoyne, probably partly to bridge a gap in their ever-dwindling finances, but really it's the feud with the Greys that is central to the Red Dead story. The family consists of Catherine Braithwaite, the matriarch of the family, her three sons Bartholomew, Gareth and Gerald, and there's also Penelope, the niece of Catherine and cousin to the boys.
You got a family, sir?
This is where the Van der Linde gang come in. In 1899, Arthur Morgan first encounters the Braithwaites when Beau Gray sends him to the Braithwaite manor to deliver a love letter to Penelope. She sends a letter of her own back which tells Beau that she plans on taking part in a women's suffrage rally. Upon hearing this, Beau begs Arthur to convince Penelope not to do it, saying it will endanger her life. But she insists on participating, and so Arthur ends up driving the stagecoach in order to give her some protection. Beau and Penelope long to be together, but are fearful of their secret love becoming common knowledge, knowing both families will forbid it. Hosea, Matthews and Dutch come up with a plan to try and get between this long-standing feud, to play both families off one another and profit in the meantime. Thus Arthur and the gang end up having several interactions with the two families over the course of one of the best chapters in the game, Chapter 3. Unfortunately, it doesn't take long for both families to realise they've been played. The gang are set up by the Greys in Rhodes, losing Sean in the process. And the Braithwaites kidnap John Marston's son Jack in retaliation for the gang stealing their prize horses, leading to possibly my favourite mission in the entire game, Blood Feuds Ancient and Modern, where the gang confronts the Braithwaites at their manor. After a massive gunfight in which the gang appears to kill all of the Braithwaites, they find the matriarch Catherine hidden away upstairs. She eventually admits to giving John's son to Angelo Bronte. Before Arthur and the gang set out to Saint Denis to look for the boy, they light the Braithwaite manor up. The scene ends with Catherine running back into the burning building in an act of self-immolation, killing herself in the process. So where does Gertrude come in? The game is incredibly sketchy on details regarding Gertrude. In fact, the game doesn't even give you her name. We only know this through the in-game credits. We never find out her age either, or any real details about her. The only certainty is the condition Arthur Morgan finds her in, and it's pretty shocking. Travel southwest of the Braithwaite Manor, into the trees, and you'll most likely hear a voice. This is Gertrude. When you approach the outhouse, Gertrude will lunge at you, grabbing, and then go on to threaten, scream, yell, spew vulgarities, all while stuttering and having very obvious difficulties with speech and communication, swinging between what initially sounds like maniacal laughter and distressed moans. If you take a closer look and peek inside, this is what Gertrude looks like, and her physical appearance is very distressing. She is physically disfigured, in a sickly state, and is very obviously struggling mentally as well. Arthur can inspect the outhouse as a place of interest, and he'll draw it in his journal. The entry reads, "Found a crazy young woman, real strange looking, locked in a kind of outhouse, hidden on Braithwaite Manor. World ain't a kind place to folk like her." As I mentioned earlier, we never learn her name, except for the in-game credits, nor do we learn her age, but as Arthur refers to her as a young woman, I'd wager she's probably early to mid-20s. But how do we know that Gertrude is Catherine's daughter? Well, that comes in a mission that happens in Chapter 6, The Course of True Love 5. Penelope later writes to Arthur, and this is her letter read in-game.
Dear sir, you were once very kind to Beau and myself, and it pains me to ask you to show us further kindness. But I have nowhere else to turn, and nobody else upon whom I can impose. I will, of course, pay you handsomely for your troubles. My family have turned quite mad and are threatening to send me away to stop my work, which they say is disgracing them. As if their history of absolute moral depravity, utter debauchery, and perpetual drunkenness did not disgrace them enough. I must escape, yet I am kept prisoner here. Can you help? Most days I am to be found at the cabins on the plantation. The main house and all it stood for are thankfully no more. Yours faithfully, Penelope Braithwaite. Can you...
Once at Braithwaite Manor, she asks him to take her to Road Station, where she and Beau will elope together. If the player takes a detour and instead brings Penelope to the outhouse, she'll refer to Gertrude as her poor cousin. Since we know that Penelope herself is Catherine's niece, that would likely make Gertrude Catherine's daughter, seeing as we aren't aware of Catherine having any siblings in the game.
I knew how you Braithwaites treated enemies. Now I know how you treat Ken, too.
It's a great shame on a family that's shamed already. I told myself she was better off here with family than in a sanatorium.
Penelope also goes on to
maybe
mention that she tries to help
I'll do
Gertrude,
what I can from
but to no
Boston
avail,
for her.
that the encounter is painful for her, that she told herself Gertrude was better off with her family than in a sanatorium, and finally that she'll do what she can for Gertrude from Boston,
You still got a train
except
to
she never actually keeps that promise. In the epilogue of Red Dead Redemption 2, the player is in control of John Marston, and the year is no longer 1899, it's 1907. If the player visits again, you'll find Gertrude's remains in the same outhouse, wearing the same clothes. With the family gone and Penelope not keeping her promise, there was nobody left at the very minimum to feed her, and she was forgotten, dying sometime between 1899 and 1907. I found this so horrific. This reminded me of an oubliette, a form of medieval punishment, basically a vertical shaft so small that the prisoner couldn't squat or lie down in, and that was it. They were placed inside and simply forgotten, doomed to starvation in a cell they couldn't even lie down in. Seems familiar, doesn't it? But her abandonment and death obviously isn't the only shocking detail here. Her family had placed her in there, and for how long? To better understand this, let's unpack some of her unique dialogue, because she's got quite a lot.
It's not been very long at all, though. I don't think it's been very long at all. I just got here basically.
This one is simply heartbreaking. Gertrude doesn't know for how long she's been locked in that outhouse, but tells herself it's just happened recently. To me, this is straight up a coping mechanism.
I'm tired, but better not sleep. I'm tired, but better not sleep.
We can't say for certain what she means here. She may have nightmares, but this again could be also a coping mechanism due to abuse. If I sleep, I'm at risk.
Oh, I can smell them coming from a mile away. I think I can't tell what's going on out there. I know what's going on out there. I can smell them.
This line, when you think about it, is really sad. Victims often become hyper aware of their surroundings, in particular their abusers, even down to the way their steps sound and how they smell from afar.
Mother said not to. Mother said not to. Oh, I'm a good girl.
She often calls out Mother, Mother where are you, Mother come braid my hair, and these all point to a young girl that has been severely mistreated by Catherine, but still desires approval and affection from her. There are plenty of instances of swearing, threats, obscenities, and most of this feels of a sexual nature.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You like that? You like my hair? You like...
The nature of these feel quite obvious. These aren't the ramblings of a maniac having conversations with herself. I believe these are painful memories, things that have actually been said to her. And then there's the repeating of numbers. This, I believe, is self-stimulatory behaviour. Everyone has this to some degree, but it's more prevalent in people with developmental disabilities. It's essentially a way of trying to calm oneself due to an emotional or sensory overload. All this paints a grim picture of Gertrude's reality and the mistreatment she suffered at the hands of those around her. We've covered off her death, and I've attempted to go through some of the worrying signs of her emotional and mental trauma. Let's look at the physical side because there's a lot going on there as well. She's very obviously suffering from alopecia, which is in an advanced stage. She's very pale and frail and has unhealthy looking skin. She's probably underfed, dehydrated. She gets next to no sunlight while simultaneously being exposed to all of the elements, wind, rain and so on. So it's unsurprising she looks in such a bad way. Then there's her left eye. It's either missing or severely infected, and this could be congenital. It could also be an injury she suffered. We simply don't know, but it's not good either way. Then there's the most noticeable one, the cleft palate, which explains why she struggles with speech. That last detail is very important, especially considering the time that Red Dead is set. Everything else discussed here can be attributed, at least partly, due to abuse and negligence, except for the cleft palate. That appears in the first trimester of fetal development, and this likely is the explanation why Gertrude was mistreated so badly. I'm by no means defending this treatment, but looking back through history, to be born with a disability was, how did Arthur put it, the world ain't a kind place to folk like her. People with disabilities were often mistreated and marginalised in the 19th and 20th centuries, particularly in Western societies. Their treatment was shaped by a mix of fear, ignorance, pseudoscience and social stigma. People with physical, intellectual or mental disabilities were often segregated from society or institutionalised, placed in asylums, poorhouses, which were frequently overcrowded, underfunded and inhumane. These institutions were justified as places of care or protection, but in reality they were often used to remove disabled individuals from public view and mainstream society. Penelope wasn't wrong when she said she was better off with a family than in a sanatorium, but not to be kept like this. They could have done far better than this. Then there was the eugenics movement, which was gaining traction at this time. People with disabilities were seen as genetically unfit and were often forcibly sterilised to prevent them from reproducing. Public education systems often excluded children with disabilities, and there were few to no accommodations. Employment opportunities were scarce, and disabled individuals were often relegated to menial work if they could find work at all. Disabilities were often misunderstood, feared, or linked to moral failings or divine punishment. If you were disabled, to a God-fearing populace, you were forsaken, this was punishment, you or your family had been shamed, touched by sin, and the media and public perception were generally very negative towards disabilities. And these last 2 points are probably the most important in explaining why the Braithwaites did this to Gertrude. As mentioned earlier on, the Braithwaites were already reeling from the abolition of the slavery movement. Their money as well as their social standing was dwindling, and now Catherine Braithwaite gives birth to a daughter who's disabled. This was knowledge the family could not let out, so they hid her away, the forgotten daughter. There is one final detail in the game which may explain why no one came looking for Gertrude, and this is just my theory. It's plausible that Gertrude had been locked in the outhouse for some time, but I highly doubt that it's since she was a child, a few years maybe, at the absolute worst. But I doubt that she was here in her early years or mid-teens. This means she was likely up in the house, so other people, visitors, would surely have seen or known about a Braithwaite daughter. But how would the family bury the secret, if the town of Rhodes or other settlements knew of her existence? There's a photo often mentioned in articles regarding Gertrude, and it's this one. Inside Doyle's Tavern in Saint Denis. It looks remarkably like Gertrude, even down to the braids in her hair. But look closely, she's got no cleft palate. My theory is this: Gertrude had another, healthier sister, possibly even a twin, and locals knew of a Braithwaite girl, but they never actually knew there were two. This presented Catherine with an opportunity. She could marry the healthier daughter off into society. The Braithwaite daughter is then out in the open for all eyes to see, and she then has the opportunity to bury her secret. The disabled daughter, Gertrude. No one finds her, No one comes looking for the daughter who's suddenly not spoken about or heard of anymore. Why would they? Either way, what happens to Gertrude is a travesty, a stain on the Braithwaite family that is unfortunately uncomfortably close to how history treated and perceived disabilities. For me as a fan of the game, it just made this mission so much more sweet though.
Easy, John.
And that is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed. I'm playing through the game currently on my channel, and every so often I'll be releasing story-based content and video essays, like this one. Both sets of videos are grouped together in playlists on my channel, should you wish to watch any more. I'm Mike the Gaming Dad, and I'll see you next time.